Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Hidden Wealth TV, the show dedicated to helping you discover and uncover your hidden wealth. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio is Chuck Oliver. He is the founder and wealth strategist at Hidden Wealth Solution. We have got a great show for you at home today. The title of today's show is Retirement Fear During an Election Year. And if what's going on in our political climate has you feeling some uncertainty, some fear, some doubt, stay with us. We are going to unpack all of that for you today, especially from a financial perspective. Chuck, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. This is a good one.
I'm excited to have the conversation too, because we're getting a lot of people asking, "What do I do? I'm concerned. Yes. I'm fearful. What can I do to protect myself with all this uncertainty?"
Exactly. And I have now been in this industry through 3 different presidential elections, and it's the same conversations that seem to happen every 4 years, and yet there's still some financial truths that remain the same. So, just understand, if you are feeling some fear, uncertainty, and doubt, we get it. We understand. You are not alone. And actually, to set up today's conversation, we have some statistics to share with you. This is according to a recent survey by the Nationwide Retirement Institute. Here's what it said. Almost half of investors believe that the 2024 election will have a bigger impact on their portfolios than market performance. I found that to be very interesting. 32% of investors believe the economy will plunge into a recession within 12 months if the political party they least align with gains power. And no matter where you fall, Republicans, Democrats, and independents believe that the outcome of the presidential election will have a direct and immediate lasting impact on the performance of the stock market. So gosh, a lot to unpack from that.
Yeah, we have both sides from the standpoint of the concern, right? Should I be more aggressive right now? Should I be more conservative right now? I'd say probably more so fearful, right? Which is why I think it's such an important topic and discussion on the program. Just the uncertainty, right? There's so many new budgets and bills being proposed, and whether it's just market performance or just the unfortunate circumstances of new budget proposals of almost $8 trillion. I mean, people are really concerned about, what do I do to get a good foundation on this thing? Right,
for sure. And I think no matter what, folks want to be prepared, right? They want to know that they're going to be okay regardless of what's happening in Washington. So when you're meeting with folks, how often are these kinds of conversations coming up these days?
Well, it's fascinating. We'll get clients that'll say, I went to cash and, I'm kind of regretting that because I would have thought we'd have fallen into a recession by now. We have other clients that are like, I'm probably maybe too aggressive, and I think I probably need to kind of pull the reins back a little bit because of the uncertainty of how the outcome is going to, what the outcome, I should say, of this election is going to be. And so we kind of see it across the board.
And by clients, you mean these are people that have not yet started working with you, right? That are coming in and
And I think that's part of the draw, right? So like you talked about, the impact of the election having more of an impact than, let's say, market performance. Just the tax proposed changes from that standpoint. I mean, it's actually easier and actually in many cases more financially beneficial to plan the taxes than to try to chase performance. But when you're uncertain about, well, what's going to take place based on who gets in office, then that has a lot of people kind of, stuck on the sidelines. And as we'll obviously prove to people that, at least historically, that's not been an issue. But the issue of the proposed changes, those, politically speaking, are going to have a pretty dramatic impact.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to point out that when pundits, people watch the news and they hear these political pundits making different statements, they're trying to make political points. They're not giving financial advice. And that's an important distinction, right?
Yeah. When, one thing you'll hear that Pelosi's husband bought a bunch of XYZ stock and it went to the moon, and then other people will say, well, such and such I was listening to said that you need to get all your money out of the stock market.
Right.
So there's a big contrast there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think you mentioned this, you've met with some people who've even felt like because of the fear, they've needed to pull all their money out of the stock market and go to cash. But is that really a sound financial strategy?
Well, we'll prove historically it's not been. In fact, that's when we meet the client, is to say, we wanted somebody to take a look at our situation that has the ability to customize the risk to our targeted risk. We just didn't feel that we were getting that, let's say, with one of the big box store brokerages where we kind of felt corralled into kind of a general portfolio option that was one of maybe 3 choices, right? A, B, C, D, A, B, or C door, so to speak.
Right.
And when you can have kind of pull the reins and be able to say, you know what, this is where I'm comfortable. I think for those of you watching, when you get this, you have the comfort of knowing that you are positioned with what you're comfortable doing. And I think, Kristen, a lot of people, because they don't have that, that's where their uncertainty comes in, and it's just easier to say, well, I'm just going to go all to cash.
Right, for sure. Well, with that uncertainty, there's some other data that is really fascinating that we thought we would share with you. So this comes from a study called Political Climate, Optimism, and Investment Decisions, and it was done by the Social Science Research Network. This is what's interesting. The study found that when Democrats are in power, the optimism of Democrats causes them to invest more aggressively, while Republicans who might be pessimistic invest more cautiously. As a result, in the years when Democrats are in power, investors who consider themselves to be Democrats earn 2.7% more than those who consider themselves to be Republicans. But when a Republican is in office as president, the opposite occurs. Republican investors earn 2.7% more than Democratic investors. So how is this possible that people are earning more based on their political affiliation?
Just because they have more optimism of their party.
Which means they're putting more money
into the market.
In the market, right. Yeah.
So they're staying out of cash more.
Yes, yeah, that's what's so interesting, right? It has nothing to do with, it's what your investing behavior is.
Right, consumer behavioral studies have shown that, you lean towards your emotions.
Right, yeah, but I think in the absence, to your point, of having a plan, people are more apt to make fear-based decisions with their money that can have serious ramifications. For example, pulling it all, going to cash. That can have long-term negative effects on someone's retirement.
Well, I mean, we ran into a couple that had done just that. They had had large gains from the prior year, and they were so fearful going into this election year. Prior to us meeting them, they moved everything to cash, and it triggered a lot of unnecessary capital gains. So we talk a lot about cause and effect, so they were more fixated on the fear of the unknown than they were the proper planning of mitigating or preventing unnecessary taxes. And the taxes will likely, as I recall this particular case, will exceed the probability of any return that they would have either saved or earned in the first place.
Had they just stayed in the market.
Stayed.
Right.
Yeah. Not only done better, but would have prevented tax savings that would have exceeded the returns.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm glad they found you, because I know that you're going to work hard in the whole team of Hidden Wealth Solution to be able to provide solutions for them. But the point is, we want to prevent mistakes from being made, and that's why we need to talk about all these ins and outs today.
Yeah, when you think about it, they refer to it as the peak 65. So we have those born in 1959, over 4 million of those folks will turn 65 this year. So over 12,000 a day are turning 65. So all of a sudden now this becomes a bigger wake-up call to, hey, I got to plan my Medicare, I need to get serious about planning my Social Security. Those are the things that people should really be focused on, not fixated on, although it is important, we'll talk about it politically, especially with 95% of what's being said in the media is not actually accurate on Main Street versus what they say on Wall Street. But there's other things that can be focused on that give you more control.
Yeah. Well, I know that is one of the things that you love talking about. I know we're going to have to take a break here in a second, but you always talk about getting competence, getting clarity, getting confidence with a plan. Talk about what someone can expect when they work with you and the team. Yeah,
when you work with us, people are more confused than ever before, right? They give them a sense of isolation, almost like they're on their own little island, right? And that gives them a sense of being powerless. So it's easy to feel powerless and say, well, I'm just going to go to cash. What's the use? Or I'm just going to stay fully, maybe overly aggressive positioned, and then they have regrets. So when you have that, what we provide for you, and we can easily put that together for you, is having direction, right? Direction, creates confidence. Confidence obviously creates new capabilities. And when you have the capability of knowing that you have all your ducks in a row, you've prepared, you've prevented, and you're prepared for the unknowns, then you're in a position of feeling confident. And when you have that confidence, you can accomplish so much more by having your ducks in a row, and that confidence comes from having all the ducks in a row.
Absolutely, Chuck, thank you. Well, to our viewers at home, if you would like to make sure that you have a solid plan in place to help you stay the course no matter what goes on in our world, no matter what the election may bring, we encourage you to pick up the phone and call 844-837-3652. Here's what's going to happen. For no cost, no charge, no obligation, you're going to be able to set up a time to meet with a member of the team from Hidden Wealth Solution via Zoom to start your very own complimentary personal wealth blueprint. And again, it costs you nothing. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how they can help you. We know that a lot of folks are scared right now, so we encourage you, don't wait. You don't have to lose sleep over this. Once you have a solid plan in place, it's amazing the clarity that can come for your own financial situation. If you'd rather not talk to someone right now, but you do have your smartphone handy, if you simply pull it out and open up that camera app, you can point, click, and scan the QR code that you see there on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Hidden Wealth Solution will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting that way as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be sharing some more studies and research to help make sure that you can prevent political uncertainty from derailing your retirement. Stay with us.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Hidden Wealth TV. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Chuck Oliver, founder and wealth strategist at Hidden Wealth Solution. Today's show is called Retirement Fear During an Election Year. We are addressing the fear and uncertainty that a lot of folks are experiencing, given that this is an election year and a lot of people don't know what's going to happen in Washington. But we're going to be sharing some more data that shows you how important it is to not only have a financial solid plan in place, but then to stay the course with your investments, because we want to prevent you from unintentionally making some fear-based emotional decisions that could have a severe detriment to your retirement. So Chuck, I know we're going to look at some more data here that helps show the importance of staying the course with your investments. I know you shared earlier how some folks have come to you after they've pulled out all of their money, put it into cash. Of course, that triggered all sorts of tax implications and some negative ramifications for their retirement. So we're going to share with you all at home some charts and graphs. The following comes from a study that was put together by Invesco prior to the 2020 presidential election. It was called 10 Truths No Matter Who Wins, and we're going to share some of those truths with you. So the first truth was that the markets have performed well under both parties. So Chuck, let's walk through what this slide is showing us here.
Yeah, so it shows the S&P delivered an average annual return of about 11%, right, for the past 75 years. Mm-hmm. It showed that the economy expanded by around 3%, right, during that same period. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the stock market's return was negative for a presidential administration only when the country was in a financial crisis, right, which obviously took place, such as like 2008. Of course, then the stagflation, right, that happened back in 1973. So The reality is neither party can stake claim to superior economic situation.
Yeah, it's interesting to note when you look at that chart that, it hasn't mattered who's been in office. We see a mix of red and blue, right? Different things have happened at different times, and the markets have really performed well under both parties. One of the other 10 truths that was highlighted in the study was that the markets don't care if you don't like who's president. So let's check out this chart that demonstrates that.
Yeah. So it basically shows $10,000 would have grown to, right? If you'd only invested when a Republican was in office as president.
Right, so that red line down at the bottom, if you'd only been invested when a Republican was president, right?
Right. The other one obviously shows what your $10,000 would have grown to if you only invested when a Democrat was the president.
Right.
But take a look at the growth of the $10,000 during that same period of time. If it had been invested the entire time, regardless of who was president, right, you can see the growth people missed out on, and it's a lot, which I know we'll talk about in the next slide.
Yes, and so that's amazing to think about. Like if people had been jumping in, jumping out, or only invested when a certain person was president, they would have earned so much less than if they had just remained invested the entire time.
Right.
And yet we know that people are doing this, right?
Yeah.
They are jumping in and they are jumping out.
We probably hear it a couple times a week.
Wow.
Yeah, especially this year, with as contentious as I think this election may be in history, the most contentious. I think people are really, they're jumpy.
Right. Yeah, they are jumpy. Well, and we're not saying that this election's not important, right?
It's very important.
It's very important for so much with our lives, with our country. But we're just saying, from a financial perspective, we're trying to prevent people from making unwise decisions with their money. So, this is why it's so important not to let your emotions get in the way. We have a third chart to share with you. This is why you want to remain invested the whole time. So walk us through what we're looking at here, the cost of timing the market.
Yeah, so it shows what would have happened had you invested $10,000 in the S&P 500, right, from January 2003 through 2022 of December.
Right.
And if you look at that, right, just missing a certain number of days, right, stayed invested, right, versus missed just even the 10 best days, right, you're basically half of where you could have been.
Right.
Just missing the 10 best days.
Yep.
And then it just gets worse from there.
Right.
So.
Well, and here's what's interesting is often, because no one has a crystal ball, no one knows what the markets are going to do when. No one knows when those best days are going to be, but a lot of times the best market performing days are immediately after some of the worst market performing days. So if you jump out, guess what? Now you've missed the opportunity to get the upswing for that best performing day.
Well, and we saw that during the pandemic, right? A lot of people that jumped too early missed out on all the rally. And then a lot of people miss out on what we call indexing, right? Having the ability to have upside without downside, especially for a certain allocation of their portfolio. So you can kind of weather the storm with whatever direction that storm moves to. And really having a custom design portfolio targeting the risk that you, the consumer, that's what you target, not what some big box store brokerage kind of leads you into a series of funds or a certain portfolio choice of 3, is having your own custom design, right? That way you've got peace of mind that you are in control of what happens as opposed to the markets controlling you.
Right. I love that you said that. It's you being in control versus the markets controlling you. Would you say then, looking at all this research, and I know there's so much more that we didn't even have time to go into in that segment, but would you say that just because there's something going on in the world or just because it's an election year means it's not an excuse to start making drastic changes with your investment strategy? Right.
And understand where you are, right? So that's one of the first steps in our process is you meet with us, having the ability to know the risk and the risk you're taking and the returns you're making in relationship to, let's say, the targeted risk that you want. Most clients are out of balance. They think the risk they're taking is drastically different than, unfortunately, what their exposure is, especially when it's not custom designed and rebalanced. But there's more than just having your money in the stock market. There's alternatives, there's other things you can catch upside without downside, things that you can invest in that are different, right, than just the general stock market to get through with better diversification of times of uncertainty.
Yes, and I'm excited because I know on the show we're all about solutions, and when we come back from this next break, we are going to be diving into some of those solutions for you given what's going on this year. But I think, Chuck, I think back to one of my mentors when I first got into this industry. He used to tell me, the reality is that money is neither red nor blue, it's green, right? And so no matter who's in power, it's making sure that you have that solid plan in place and can stay the course to achieve your financial goals.
The plan is key, a peace of mind plan.
Yes, for sure. Well, if you would like to receive your peace of mind plan, again, what we are offering today is the opportunity for you to schedule a complimentary Zoom call with Chuck and the team of Hidden Wealth Solutions so that they can build your very own personal wealth blueprint. Again, this is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how they can help and serve you. That number to call is 844-837-3652, or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. When we come back, I'm going to ask Chuck the number one question that's on the top of everyone's minds. Given that this is an election year, how should you be investing your money? Stay with us to find out.
So people today feel more confused than ever before, right? When you feel confused, right, you feel isolated. You feel kind of like you're on your own little island. You just don't really know what to do. So then that gives you that feeling of feeling powerless. And then people just become kind of overanalysis paralysis. They'll just sit back, and the best decision for them is just to not make a decision. And so then they're kind of stuck. And so what are they looking for? They're looking for direction. So my passion is when we can have a client, which hence the name Hidden Wealth, and help them discover and uncover like all these things where we've gone before them, self-educated, tested, some worked, some didn't, etc. But then we found the formula of like the proper strategies, and then in the most strategic order, people then have that direction. It gives them a huge amount of confidence. Once they have that direction, right, and now the confidence, they have this capability that they didn't even realize that was even possible. So direction creates confidence, and confidence creates capability.
We're talking about retirement fear during an election year. Welcome back to Hidden Wealth TV. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Chuck Oliver. And, you know, I think it's important to re-presence, Chuck. We're not saying that this election isn't important. This election is very important. The problem is when people are working themselves into a tizzy and as a result making poor financial decisions, that's what we're trying to help avoid. And so I know before the break I said I was going to ask you the number one question that's on everyone's minds. I'm sure our viewers want to know as well. Yeah. How should one be investing their money during an election year?
Yep. You know, it made me think a lot about the clients that would reach out and say, you know, and I think of prior elections, you know, we're just going to sit on the sideline till we can see who's elected.
Right.
And just as we talked about in the first part, you know, the prior segment of the program, I mean, you missed the best 10 days, you know, you had half of what you could have had over that period of that roughly 10-year period.
Right, if you were jumping in and out of the market, trying
years.
to sit on the sidelines, you miss out.
Yeah, and that's a big cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sitting on sideline cost that most people aren't going to make up anytime soon.
Right.
So I think the answer to that question is making sure that you have the plan that fits you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously a general statement, but let's look at the reality of where we are in this economy. So it now takes, according to certain studies, about $140 to fill the grocery cart. Mm-hmm. Well, golf green fees are up as well.
Right.
But the grocery cart that took $100 just 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You look at the fact of where we are from the standpoint of it now takes projected $1.5 million to $1.6 million of what took just a few years ago of what people thought $1 million would accomplish with having that kind of retirement number. And then we keep hearing, you know, what's your number, what's your number?
Yes, yeah.
So I like to say the number one thing you can do in the uncertainty of having fear and of your retirement and election year is to have a plan, right? Mm-hmm. But have a written plan. But control the things that you can control, right? Mm-hmm. And taxes are controllable. Mm-hmm. Inflation, right? We talk about tax elimination, staying ahead of inflation, you know, lifestyle and legacy preservation. Take advantage of things of where you know things are today, so before the outcome of this election, which I think the outcome, it's critical. This is a critical election year, clearly, regardless of what people believe politically. The reality is we see it in the economy. Inflation is out of control.
Yep.
$4 trillion of additional taxes have been proposed, of new taxes. Our deficit spending is running 50% greater than it was this time just last year, 50% more. And we're not stopping the spending. So if we know that things are going to continue to cost more, we got to find solutions that will provide good, solid returns that will help us stay ahead of inflation. One of the greatest things you can do to get a return on tax, being a far superior return than most people get in the market, is learning how to mitigate or eliminate unnecessary taxes. That's why we have a tax team. So if there was a time to take advantage of things, get your ducks in a row now, because the outcome of this election is it's going to be pretty interesting, I think. I think we're going to see a lot of volatility. So make sure you have a custom designed portfolio that targets your risk. Make sure that you've addressed the tax planning. Make sure that you're looking at alternatives, like I talked about. Indexing is different from just general investing.
Right.
And these are the things that we're able to look at for a client so they can build a better mousetrap without taking unnecessary risk, but getting greater return, but eliminating the taxes in the process, all of which are going to be impacted by the outcome of this election.
For sure. And I think that can, once that solid plan is in place, it can prevent those knee-jerk reactions from happening that do lead to those poor, unwise, fear-based financial decisions that can really wreck someone's retirement.
Yeah, you have to take you really need to have a proactive approach, but I think a lot of people don't have that direction, right? They're looking for that direction, so the easy solution is just to sit on the sideline or move everything to cash or go all in or whatever they may think. We've seen both extremes, and the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. You just have to find it with what fits for you.
Well, I think sometimes we're too close to our own situation to be able to make those rational decisions, and that's what I really appreciate about you and the team of Hidden Wealth Solution is you are on it in terms of in the front lines, understanding what the proposed changes, tax law changes, legislative risk that's happening, and then you're able to help your clients navigate those successfully, but it all starts with having that solid plan in place.
Yeah, you at home, as you sit there and you think about, hey, you're talking to me, I'm the one that has this concern about who's going to get in office, and a lot of you have shared your views with us, and we understand where you're coming from. This is a critical election year, one that will change the course, I think, of history. And the reality is, many of you have reached out and said, you know what, I've kind of gone alone, I've kind of my do-it-yourself Home Depot type of approach. The reality is you've come to terms to say, you know what, I want a second set of eyes on this. I want someone to look at this and get my ducks in a row to make sure that I'm not over-risking, I'm not under-risking, and you find alternatives that a lot of you have said, gosh, I didn't even know these things existed, especially around getting out of the tax system, legally, ethically, and morally. That's one of the things you can control. In fact, that's a series of things that people can control. They just have to take the initiative to take that step.
Well, what is it you always say about there's two types of tax codes in this country,
yeah,
right?
One for the informed and one for the uninformed. And it's the same way with portfolios as it is taxes, as it is legacy, as estate planning. You have to be informed.
Absolutely. When I know that's what you're so passionate about doing is helping folks be informed and then developing a solid strategy so that they can stay the course regardless of the uncertainty going on in the world.
That's absolutely correct. Having a peace of mind plan, especially with what we're facing in this election. And if you're coming up on retirement and you're uncertain, this is the time to get certain.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know we have less than a minute of this show. Parting words, if we had to sum up this whole concept of retirement fear during an election year, what do you want to say to our viewers?
Control the things that you can control. And many of you don't realize or haven't come to terms of realizing that you can control more than what you realize, right? So by learning how to have a tax plan, by learning how to have asset and estate tax protection, making sure that your portfolio is specifically designed to the risk that you feel comfortable with, and learning alternatives, right, that give you upside without downside, but more risk with less return, and eliminating the tax man, those are all things that people have come to realize.
Absolutely. Chuck, thank you so much. Such a valuable conversation today. And thank you to our viewers for joining us. Here's the reality. Calling costs you nothing. Not making this call, having to worry late at night, that could cost you everything. We don't want that to be you. So get your complimentary personalized wealth blueprint by calling 844-837-3652. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to being back with you next time here on Hidden Wealth TV.